Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from July 24th, 2022, and I'm recording this on January 19th, 2023. As always, I'm giving you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant because the market's always moving and changing. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I used. Back when I really started doing this, those were, well, the CBSI was really the only real prominent top 10 list that came out. Now there's a bunch of different ones, but these are the two I've stuck with for the last 4 years at this point. We just crossed that line a couple days ago. So for the last 4 years, we've been looking back at originally the CBS and now and the Comic Tom list. So without further ado, we got 19 books to talk about this week. Let's dig into these lists, see what we can learn about why these books were hot back then, what's happened to them since, and how they're performing in the market now, so you can make better decisions about which books you should be patient on and which books you should chase. And if you've been paying attention, you know that it's mostly to be patient. But let's dig in and see what happened this week. First up, we have Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, #1 from 1988. The first Dungeons & Dragons comic. And this hit the list because the trailer for Dungeons & Dragons movie, which is coming out, I think, next month, hit the interwebs at that point. So caused this book to jump all the way up to $40. Now it's a $15 to $40 book, still up from what it was before this happened. It's like a $10 book before the trailer dropped. So it's still doing pretty well, but definitely an I'll be back, definitely down a little bit. 9.8, couple of sales, all right at $300. So yeah, this one's doing pretty well still. But yeah, definitely down a little bit from there. We'll see what happens with this movie. I know there's been a lot of controversy around Dungeons and Dragons lately. Has nothing to do with the movie. We'll see if that actually negatively impacts the movie or not. Next, and really for the next 10 books, we're going to talk about covers. This was the week of San Diego Comic-Con, so we have a bunch of San Diego Comic-Con cover variants we're going to be talking about. First up, we have Spawn #1, the SDCC blank variant. This was limited to 1,500. McFarlane was there, so a lot of these you'll see on the market are signed. Back then, unsigned ones were going for like 100 to 150. Signed ones were going for 175 to 200. 9.8 of the... So now, unsigned ones are still 100 to 150. 9.8 going for 200. And signed ones raw, you're talking 150 to 200, and 9.8, 500. So basically, this has been steady and worth it. It's right at the same values it was going back then for both the signed and unsigned copies. The Spawn book has stayed as steady as it could be over the last 6 months. And I will tell you, it's the best performing cover of all these we're going to talk about from SDCC. Next, we have Grimm #1, the Veronica Fish SDCC variant. Back then, this thing was going for 125 plus on the market. Now it's 90 to 130. With the interestingly enough, 9.8s are going for almost the exact same price range as just regular raw copies of 90 to 140. So the spread is almost exactly the same. People are actually paying more for raw copies occasionally than a couple of the 9.8s. Yeah. But overall, just down a little bit on the raw side. So we're still going to call this an I'll be back, even though the 9.8s are pretty cheap. I would think if you can pay the same price, that just depends on what kind of collector you are, but just want to guarantee yourself that 9.8. Next, we have Space Usagi #1, the Peach Momoko gold foil SDCC, limited to 500. There's a couple of these foil versions of this one. There's a red one and a silver one. The gold one was the one we were talking about back then. $100 to $125 for copies of this back then. Now it's a $30 book, 9.8, 60 to 90. Yeah, this is a dumpster fire. First of a couple we're going to have here in a row. This one came plummeting down not a good investment if you chase this particular cover. And this is really a little bit more typical of overall, on average, your con variants. Next, we have Invincible number 12, the Ryan Otley SDCC foil variant, limited to 250. Back then, this was going for 150, and now it's a $40 to $50 book. 9.8 going 50 to 150. Yeah, so this is another dumpster fire. 150 down to less than 50 is a big drop. Just another one that has not sustained, and really not that. This doesn't really appear to be that special of a cover, but yeah, it's definitely dropped way back. Next, we have Harley Quinn number 16, the Sozumaki SDCC foil variant, limited to 1,000, but supposedly there's also a few online that people were like, is it really 1,000? So there was some question about what that number was. Back then, another $100 to $125 book coming out of the con or going into the con. I forget which this really was. Now raw copies are $25 to $50, 9.8, $100. Another third in a row dumpster fire of these SDCC covers. Next, we have Captain Marvel number 39. This Gurhiru SDCC variant. Didn't have a number listed with it back then, and I didn't really look to see what the actual print run on this one. But this is Captain Marvel with Jeff. Kind of a cute cover. Was going for 100 plus back then, and this is in our I'll Be Back trend. This one didn't drop as much, only 80 to 100 now, so just a little bit down from what it was going back then. So you could do better, but it's still going for pretty good value for a con variant this much later. But we still got two more Comic-Con covers, I should say, and then two more covers after that. So still 4 covers on this list. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 1, the J. Scott Campbell SDCC variant, limited to 1,000. This one was going for also 100 to 150 back then. A lot of $100 plus on these books right out of the gate. Now this book is a little all over the place. $30 all the way up to 140. Although most of the sales are under 100, which is a couple over. So we're still putting this as an I'll Be Back for sure, because you can definitely get it a little bit cheaper, and in some cases way cheaper. But yeah, this one has come down. Depending on which copy you buy or selling, it could potentially is, trap or dumpster fire territory. But it's a little all over the place. So we'll rate it overall as just an I'll Be Back. Next, we have the Mandalorian number 1, the Addy Granoff SDCC black and white variant. This one was also going for 140 plus. This is the one of these I thought might have some value, because technically these are our first appearances in here. So I thought this one might hold pretty well. It didn't turn out to be worth it, though. More of an I'll Be Back, as it's now down to around $100 for a raw copy. 9.8 is sitting at about 400. So I will say it's kind of hard to pin down exactly what this book's going for. Most of the sales are actually sets of this in the Virgin. The other one is the color, just like the color version of the number 1, but it's just a Virgin variant. So there's a couple of these. So this one is a little bit hard to pin down, just because there's a ton of sales that are the pair, going anywhere from 150 to 200. But interestingly enough, the other copy will also sell for around 100. So just gives you an idea where you're at on this. All right, we have 2 covers left, but they are not SDCC variants. First up, we have Catwoman number 45, the Sozumaki 1 in 25. Another one of those Sozumaki 1 in 25s hitting the list back then. This one was hitting 80 to 100 back then. Now it's a $40 to $70 book. 9.8 only cost you 90, all the way to 200. So big range on those 9.8s. This was down in a bit of a trap. Like I said, as most of the sales are on the kind of the $40, $50 range, with just a couple in that $60, $70 range. So yeah, I would definitely still rule this as a trap. Love all these. I've loved a bunch of these Sozumaki Catwoman covers. She is off the book now. It'll be interesting to see where she goes next. Next and last of our covers is Black Adam number 2. This is the 1 in 50. This is with White Adam on the cover. This is the first appearance of White Adam, who is the son of Black Adam. Back then, raw copies were going for $75, so almost 1 in 50. So interestingly enough, based on the rules, it's not even double on a 1 in 50, so you'd expect this to turn into a bit of a trap. I marked it as an I'll be back. Not sure what to think about this. Only 3 sales I could find recently. 80 and 90 for 2 raw copies that went, like, only, I should say, only sales since December 1st. Only 3 sales since December 1st. 80 and 90 for 2 raw copies. I will say, like, in November, there's a couple of raw sales that were down around 30, but just, yeah, that's long enough ago. Not sure exactly where this book is going. But a 9.8 sale that went just recently was $15 plus shipping for 9.8. It was obviously an auction, didn't go for anything. So what do you say about this? Technically, those 2 most recent raw sales are up a little bit. 9.8 is obviously, it was a steal that people just didn't catch or find. But there were some sales back in November that were lower. Books a little all over the place. I kind of put it as just kind of a steady, I'll be back. Just kind of, if you were tracking this when you were better off, just kind of wait and pick your spot. You could get a steal, or you could get, or depending on if you were patient. So, hey everyone, as I was recording this or editing this to put it together and post it, I realized I skipped one of the books, our only Comic Buzz book this week, and that was Amazing Spider-Man number 93. This is the first appearance of Ben Reilly as Chasm, which of course everybody was pumping up, and right now we're getting that Dark Web event where we have him going on as Chasm. Back then, raw copies were only doing $8, so about double cover. Now it's still a $5 to $10 book, despite the fact we're in the event. 9.8 is going 60 to 80. So this ended up being just kind of a steady and an I'll be back. But I did want to make sure I included our one Comic Buzz book of the week. Now back to previously recorded material later. All right, with that, we're finally going to move into some MCU related stuff. We got some rumors. We got, as well as some things that were actually happening back then. And first up, we have X-Men number 239. The second appearance of Mr. Sinister, first mention of Madeline Pryor as Goblin Queen. And so basically there were some rumors that Javier Bardem was going to be cast as Mr. Sinister that were going around Hall H. And yeah, but turned out to actually be wrong. Nothing was announced, but that was what caused this book to jump onto the list, as people thought this was going to be announced. It didn't happen. Back then, raw copies were going for 25. 9.8 hit 325. Now, raw copy will cost you 5 to 30, so in that same range, but a little bit of an I'll be back. 9.8 all the way down to 2 to 215, which is borderline, which is trap area, but not as many of those sales, so we'll go with the I'll be back on this one. As this didn't happen, no Mr. Sinister yet. I'm sure at some point we will start getting these X-Men characters in the MCU. We know we're getting a Deadpool movie, but how that's actually going to be attached to the main MCU, don't know yet. And speaking of, next up we have Wolverine number 1, the first solo Wolverine book. This was down. Basically, again, this was people thinking we were going to get an announcement of Wolverine coming at Hall H. Also didn't happen, but that's what people were anticipating. Notice we later got that Hugh Jackman was coming back as Wolverine in the Deadpool movie, but that's what people were expecting. Back then, raw copies were going for 200. 9.8 hit 700. Now it's a $40 to $90 book raw. 9.8, 6 to 700. So it went down and I'll be back. My guess is this is one of those where the raw price that Tom listed, this was before I was really paying too close attention to this sometimes, was actually a little lower than that 200, and they were averaging in some other stuff, but I don't know, but still put this down as an I'll be back. Still a great book. Next, we have Deadpool Circle Chase number 1. This is the first Deadpool solo story, so another first solo. And again, we thought people were specking they'd get an update at Hall H. They didn't get it. We've obviously gotten it since. Back then, raw copies were going for 15. 9.8 was up to 145. Now it's still a $10 to $25 book raw. 9.8, 125, 150. So this is another kind of steady worth it. You could argue maybe steady I'll be back, but I leaned on the worth it side here. Is it, up a little bit, or can be up a little bit on the raw side. I would say the average raw is up to like 18 now instead of what it was 15 back then. So Next, we have Avengers number 38. This was still coming out of Love and Thunder, and this is the first meeting of Hercules with the Avengers. Back then, $65 for raw sales. A 9.6 hit 1,045. No recent sales of a slab that nearly that high grade, so we're just sticking with the raw sales, 15 to 60. So a down, and then I'll be back for this older book. Not a huge drop, but not as much interest at the moment. The cat is going nuts, but I only have 3 books left, so we're going to try to plow through while she's crying at the door. Hopefully she doesn't get too loud. I'll give her lots of attention in a minute. Next, we have Thor Love and Thunder number 1, the AMC premiere giveaway book. This is a classic cover collection inside, so it's just a collection of covers, but this was given away at the premiere of the movie. Back then it was raws were going for $12. Now it's a $6 book. So yeah, a bit of a trap, half price. Not a lot of interest in this at the moment. 2 books left. Tomb of Dracula number 1. Again, people were thinking maybe we'd get some Dracula news or with an update on Blade. Didn't get it, but this is the first appearance of Dracula. Raw copies $4.50 on average, which again I think is probably that high thing that Tom and them do sometimes. 8.5 going for $900. Now it's a $90 to $400 book on the raw side. 8.5 down to $800, so definitely an I'll be back. Down a little bit, but just the market in general is down, even on a book like this. And then last but not least, we have World War Hulk number 1. Again, there were rumors that we were going to get a Hulk movie announcement. Again, we didn't get it. So these are all books. So I guess this was all like the list right before San Diego Comic-Con. So these were, I guess this gets my date, or like when Tom and them put out the list, we didn't know everything that was going to be announced at Comic-Con. So yeah, this was pre-haul 8s for sure, and these were just books people have been specking on in the week leading up. Back then this was a $15 book, 9.8 going for $250. Now it's an $8 to $15 book with 9.8 going for $80 to $100. So I call this one a trap. There's enough of a percentage of the sales of the 9.8 that definitely would rate this as a trap. So that's it. Those are our 19 books. Again, 15 of the 19 down, 4 just steady, no books up. So far in 23, the market hasn't started shifting. We'll see as we go forward if maybe we get a little bounce back. But right now, not seeing it yet. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.